So I asked you guys to solve these two equations. What do you need to do on the top one, on the first one, to solve that? Subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm going to minus 2, minus 2. I have 3x equals negative 2. What else do I need to do to finish solving for x? Divide both sides by 3. So x equals negative 2/3. We're going to leave that one in its fraction form because if you put that in your calculator, you do negative 2 divided by 3, you get negative 0.66666666666. It just runs off the screen. If it comes out to a nice pretty decimal that stops and you want to write it in decimal form, that's okay. But for the most part, I prefer things left as fractions. All right. Second one, number 2. I can think of 2 different ways to solve this problem and get the same answers. If I wanted to solve it using the same kind of thinking that I did on the problem up above, what would I do? Add 4 to both sides. That would give me x squared equals 4. How do I undo the squared part? Square root. And when we take a square root of both sides, we get how many answers? 2. So I would have x equals plus or minus the square root of 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So I would have x equals plus or minus 2. Or you could write that as x equals 2, x equals negative 2. All right, I said I could think of 2 different ways to solve that bottom one. This is one way. How else could I have chosen to solve that? Can't do the square root first. Good thought, though. The other way I'm thinking of doing it starts with an F. What'd you say? Factoring. We could have chosen to solve this by factoring. How does x squared minus 4 factor? X plus 2 and x minus 2. And then it would still be equal to 0. Only when I have factors equal to 0 can I do this next piece. If my factors are equal to 0, then I can take each one of those factors and set them both equal to 0. And then I solve both of those equations for x. What would I do here to the left one to solve it for x? Minus 2 on both sides. So I would have x equals negative 2. What would I do to the other equation to solve for x? Add 2 to both sides. So x equals positive 2. How many answers did we get when we solved it by factoring? 2. We got a positive 2 and a negative 2. When we solved it using the other method, we got how many answers? 2, a positive 2 and a negative 2. So either one of those methods is fine for solving this second problem. All right. Please go ahead and pull out your notes packet. Open it up to where we left off. All right, so you need these 2 things. There you go. 4-5, rationals, day 2. Yesterday, we talked about rational functions. We practiced identifying AH and K, writing our vertical and horizontal asymptotes, and describing the transformation. The one piece that we have not really talked about yet is how to actually put that on a graph. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're still going to identify AH and K because all three of those pieces are important to making my graph. We're not going to be describing it in what we're practicing today. We did that yesterday. If you need some more practice with it, I'm happy to do some more practice problems with that part. All right, so let's just start off by identifying our pieces. What is my A value? 2. Here's A. What's my K value? -4. How do I find my H value? Take the denominator, set it equal to 0. So to find H, I have x plus 3 equals 0. I need to solve that for x. What do I do here to get x all by itself? Subtract 3 from both sides. So x equals -3. This number right here, that is h. So that's what I'm going to put on the line here for h, -3. But the entire equation is my vertical asymptote. X equals -3. My vertical asymptote is always going to be x equals h. And that's going to be the very first thing that I put on my graph. The way we graph our vertical asymptote, on the x-axis, I'm going to go find -3. So find -3 on the x-axis. I put a little point there. Which way does a vertical line go? Up and down like this. I'm going to draw an up and down dashed line through that point. All right. So there's my vertical asymptote. Vertical is x equals h. Horizontal is y equals k. So this starts with a y equals, what's my k value? -4. Y equals -4. We're going to go and put this one on the graph now. So I'm looking at my equation. I go to the y-axis and I find -4. Find -4 on your y-axis. Put a dot there. Which way does a horizontal line go? Back and forth, left and right. I'm going to draw a left and right line through that point. All right. Do you guys remember yesterday when we labeled the pluses and minuses around the quadrants? Yeah. All right. So we're going to start in quadrant 1. That's always going to be the upper right quadrant. This is a positive quadrant. Then I move counterclockwise. We move counterclockwise, so upper left, that's quadrant 2. Is that one a positive or a negative? Yes. Over to the left is negative. Yep. How do you know when they're positive and negative? Good question. So think about when you multiply or divide things, all right? This quadrant over here, my x's are positive, my y's are positive. What happens when I multiply two positives together? I get a positive. What happens when I divide two positives? I get a positive. Over here in this quadrant, my x's are negative, but my y's are positive. When I multiply a negative and a positive together, what happens? I get a negative. When I divide a negative and a positive, I get a negative. So now I'm coming down here to the third quadrant. Here my x's are negative and my y's are negative. If I multiply two negative numbers, what happens? We get a positive. Down here is a positive quadrant. And then I come over to my last quadrant, quadrant 4. My x's are positive, but my y's are negative over in quadrant 4. When I multiply a positive and a negative together, what happens?
Positive, negative.
We get a negative. This is a negative quadrant. Those pluses and minuses will never change. It's always going to be those pluses and those minuses in those particular quadrants for every problem we do here. All right, so I've got my positives and negatives labeled up. We're only going to graph in two of those quadrants. It's either going to be the two positive quadrants or the two negative quadrants. Which piece do I look at, A, H, or K, to know which quadrant I'm going to be in? A. This is positive. So we graph in the positive quadrants. So I'm going to circle the two positives here. Most important though, after I circle the two positives, which ones are we not graphing in? Negatives. I'm going to scratch those out. I'm scratching them out because none of my points are allowed to go there. Take the time to scratch out the ones that we're not going to graph in because that will help you with where to put your points. All right. We got our vertical and horizontal asymptotes on there. We got our pluses and minuses. We know which quadrants we're in, and more importantly, which quadrants we're not in. To get our points, we're going to go up, down, left, and right, whatever our A value is. And in 1. Up, down, left, right, whatever A is, and then we're going to go in 1. What is our A value? 2. Positive 2. I'm going to start counting from where these asymptotes are crossing each other. Do you guys see where those are intersecting? That's where I do all my counting from. I'm going to go up 2. So 1, 2. And I'm going to go into a quadrant. I'm not allowed to put a point on the asymptote. Remember, we're never allowed to touch or cross the asymptotes. So I go up 2. Which way do I have to go? Because I've scribbled out the other one, so I can't go that way. I went up 2. I need to go into a quadrant. I have to go to the right. I can't put a point where I've scribbled. So I put a point right here. Up 2 and into my positive quadrant 1. Go back to where those two asymptotes are crossing each other, where they intersect. We went up our A value of 2. Now we're going to go down. So from where they cross, I'm going to go down 2 units because that's my A value. We have to go left 1 because I scribbled out the other quadrant. Go back to where the asymptotes cross. We already went up 2 and in 1. So now I'm going to go down 2. I have to go in 1. I always jump in 1 because I'm not allowed to put a point on my asymptote. I know it has to go this way because nothing is allowed to go over there. I scribbled it out. So it has to go this way. Does that make sense? All right. We have to go all 4 directions. So far I've gone up, I've gone down. I still need to go left and right. Go back to where the asymptotes cross. Go left 2. That puts me right here. Go down 1 because I'm not allowed to put a point in spots where I've scribbled it out. Have I gone all 4 directions yet?
No, you gotta go right.
I need to go right. Go back to where they cross. Go right, whatever our A value is. Our A value is 2. So from here I go to the right. 1, 2. Which way do I have to jump to go in 1? I have to go up. Because I'm not allowed to put any points in the quadrants that I've scribbled out. How many points do I have total?
4.
4. Have any of them ended up in the scribbled out spaces?
No.
Then I've got them in the right spots. Are we allowed to cross the asymptotes? No, not allowed to touch or cross. So my graph is going to hug along the asymptote and curve through those points, and then it's going to hug along the other asymptote because I'm not allowed to cross them. Same thing up here in the first quadrant. Hugs along the asymptote, curves through those 2 points, and then lays flat along this asymptote because I'm not allowed to cross it. All right. The last thing they asked me to do was what? What's the only pieces we haven't filled in? Domain and range. Domain is talking about the x's or the y's? The x's. My x's are allowed to be anywhere they want to on the graph, all real numbers, except where my asymptote is. Where is my vertical asymptote? -3. So x is not allowed to be -3. Wherever this asymptote is, that's what x is not allowed to be. Is range talking about x's or y's? These are my y's. My y's are allowed to be anything they want to be, except what? What is the one place that my y's are not allowed to touch? -4. My y's cannot touch that horizontal asymptote. Y cannot be equal to -4. This is how we're going to do domain and range for all of these rationals. It's all real numbers except where my asymptotes are. X goes with domain, Y goes with range. So far, so good? Yes, sir.
Is it always in?
Is it always what?
In 1.
Does it always end in 1? Oh, in 1, yes. It's always up, down, left, right, whatever A is, and in 1. That part never changes. Yep, your A value can change, but the in 1 will never change. Do you guys have any other questions for me about this one before we try a second one? All right, let's look at the next one. We're going to start off by identifying A, H, and K. A is 1. So here's A. Let's do K next, because K is pretty easy. K is 3. How do I figure out H? Get X by itself. From where? Where is X right now? Denominator. Take this denominator, set it equal to 0. So to find H, I'm going to take that denominator, X minus 1. We're going to set it equal to 0. Jaden, you said I need to do what to solve this for X? Add 1 on both sides. So I get X equals +1. What is this number? Which piece of important information is that 1? That is H. So H is 1. But the whole equation is what? The whole equation, the x equals 1, is what? It's my vertical asymptote. X equals 1. Remember, my vertical asymptote is going to be x equals h. I want to use that equation to figure out where to put it on my graph. This equation tells me which axis to go to. Which axis do I go to? X-axis. And I go to what number on the x-axis? 1. Go to 1 on the x-axis. Right here. Which way does a vertical line go? I'm going to do an up and down line through that point on my graph. This is my vertical asymptote. Graph is not going to be allowed to touch or cross that. So I've got my vertical asymptote. I still need the horizontal asymptote. Y equals 3. It's going to be y equals k. This equation tells me where to go on my graph. Which axis do I go to? The y-axis, and I go find what number on the y-axis? I go find 3 on the y-axis, right here. And then I draw what kind of a line? Horizontal, left and right. We're going to go through that point and do a back and forth horizontal line through that point. All right, we've graphed our vertical, we've graphed our horizontal. Next thing I need to do is what in my 4 corners? The pluses and minuses, right? And then we'll use our A value to figure out which quadrants we're in. Upper right, quadrant 1, this is always a positive quadrant. Quadrant 2 is always a negative quadrant. Quadrant 3, lower left, positive. And quadrant 4, lower right, negative. Okay, so I labeled my pluses and minuses, my positives and negatives. How do I know which quadrants I'm supposed to be in? The A value. Is A a positive or a negative number? Positive. So we're going to graph in the positive quads. So I'm going to circle the 2 positives. And then the more important part, what do I do with those 2 negatives? Cross them out, scribble them out. No points are allowed to go in the scribbled out quadrants. All right, we're ready to graph our points. We're going to go up, down, left, and right, whatever our A value is, and in 1. Where do I start my count from? Where they meet, where the 2 asymptotes cross each other. So right here. What is my A value? 1. So I go up 1. I can't stay on the asymptote, so I got to jump. I jump to the right. Why do we jump to the right? Can't go into the negatives. We scribbled that out. I go back to where they cross. I went up 1, so now I want to go down 1. I can't stay on the asymptote, though. Jump left this time. Go back to where they cross. I've gone up, I've gone down. Now I go left or right. So let's go left, and I go in 1, which puts me where? Down 1. I land right on top of the point that I made before, right? That's okay. 2 of my dots just landed on top of each other. That's all right. I go back to where they cross. I've gone up, I've gone down, I've gone left. We're going to go to the right. I go right A, right 1, and what? Go up 1. That lands me right on top of my other point. Again, that's okay. Whenever my A value is 1, that's going to happen. They're going to land on top of each other. So I only have 2 points right now to use. That's all right. Lays flat along the asymptote. Curves through those points. Does not cross the other asymptote. Comes along this asymptote here, curves through these points, lays flat along the other asymptote. Not allowed to touch or cross my asymptotes. Last thing we need to do is domain and range. Domain, we're talking about x's or y's? X's. How does my domain start? All real numbers, except x is not allowed to go where the asymptote is. Where's that asymptote? At 1. X cannot be not equal to 1. Range is talking about the y's. What are the y's allowed to be? All real numbers, except y cannot be equal to 3 because that's where that asymptote is. Fantastic job so far, guys. I want to do one more together, and then you guys are going to do one on your own. And we'll see how you do. I'll be available for questions. So go ahead and turn to the next page. We're going to do the one at the top together. What is A? -3. What is K? -1. How do I find H? Get X by itself. Take my denominator, set it equal to 0. So I have X minus 4 equal to 0. How do I get the X all by itself now? Sorry, X plus 4, my bad. Minus 4 on both sides. So X equals what? -4. What do I know now? There's 2 things that I know from doing that. I know my vertical asymptote. This whole equation comes down here. X equals -4. What else does this tell me? I'm going to use it for my domain. I'm thinking of something up above that I haven't filled in yet. H. This -4 right here is my H value. So H is -4. Let's go put that vertical asymptote on the graph. Help me use this equation to figure out where to put it. I go to the, go to the x-axis, find -4, which is on the left. Put a dot there. And then I do what kind of line? Vertical, up and down. All right, that's my vertical asymptote. What's my horizontal? Y equals -1. Y equals K. How do I use that equation to help me figure out where to put this at? It's going to be horizontal. Where do I put my horizontal line? Just wherever I want? -1 on the y-axis right there. We're going to do a horizontal, a back and forth, left and right line. All right. Pluses and minuses next. Where do I start?
Positive on the first.
Positive. Upper right. This is a positive or negative? Positive. I'm going to move counterclockwise over to quadrant 2. This is negative. Continuing to move counterclockwise, I come down here to quadrant 3. Positive. And I end over here in quadrant 4, and this one is negative.
Now, since they're all three negatives, do you shade out the positive side?
Yes. My A value is negative. So we're going to graph in which quadrants? Negative quadrants.
Last one.
Yes. We will graph in the negative quads. So I'm going to circle the negatives. It's always coming from my A value, which quadrants I'm in. So if I'm in the negative quadrants, which ones do I scribble out? Positives. Not going to be in those positive quadrants. No points are allowed to go there.
Oh, man.
Give me just a second. I've got another graph you can use. Up, down, left, and right. Whatever A is. And in 1. My A value is what again? What's my A value? -3. Up -3, down -3. Since I'm going in all 4 directions, I don't have to worry about the negative part. I'm going to go up, down, left, and right, and I don't have to worry about the negative part of it. So we're just going to move 3. Where do I start at? Where the lines cross, right here. How far do I go up? 3. 1, 2, 3. I go in 1. Is that going to be to the left or to the right? To the left. Put my point right here. Whatever our A value is, I don't worry about the negative part because I'm going all 4 directions. But it's whatever number A is. Go back to where they cross. I went up 3. Now I go down 3. 1, 2, 3. And I have to jump which way this time? I can't stay on the asymptote. I have to go to the right. Why to the right? Yep, we're not supposed to be in the plus. We scribbled it out. I can't put a point where the scribbles are. I've gone up 3. I've gone down 3. What's next? Left or right? So we're going to go left. 1, 2, 3. And up 1. Have I gone all 4 directions yet? Nope. I've gone up, I've gone down, I've gone left. Now I go right. How far to the right do I go? 3. Why? Because the A is -3. 1, 2, 3. And I go down 1. Right here. I've got 4 points on there. What do I do now to finish this? Yep, do the thing. Curve it out. Lays along the asymptote, curves through our points. Lays along the asymptote, curves through our points. What's my domain? All real numbers. X cannot equal -4. What's my range? All real numbers, and y cannot be equal to -1. I want you guys to do number 4 on your own. Do number 4 on your own. Number 4.
What is the first, like, how do you do? It's only 1 over 8, so it's not like 1 plus something.
So what do we keep doing with our denominators?
Like, equaling it to 0.
Equaling it to 0. We do the same thing there. Whatever's on the bottom of that fraction, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, whatever's on the bottom, we put it equal to 0.
And it's going to be 8.
Yes. Guys, I want you working on number 4. So what do we keep doing with our denominators to get those h values?
We will like put the x by itself.
Well, what did I do up there? To find h, what did I do with my denominator?
Subtract it by itself.
I set it equal to 0.
Oh, so it's going to be 0?
Yes.
So then x equals 0. See, look at you.
That is absolutely correct. Don't forget the all real numbers except. You have to have all real numbers except x and y can't be those pieces.
Oh, and what else was it?
So see that funny looking r thing that I have?
Yeah.
You need to have that and the x does not equal 4.
Oh.
Both of those pieces have meaning.
So since the x is 0, do you just put it on the 0 line?
Yep. Find 0 on the x-axis and then do a vertical line up and down.
Like just that?
Is that a vertical line?
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
That's the father.
What was your question, Dwayne? Yes, the pluses and minuses stay the same. So this will always be plus, this will always be minus, this will always be plus, and that'll always be minus. Always, always. Okay. Go to the x-axis, find 0. Where's 0 on the x-axis? Do a vertical line through that. Which way does vertical go?
Up and down?
Up and down. So your vertical is right here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. 1, 0.
I didn't use a big camper.
Yes, that's perfect so far. So now we want to go and graph those asymptotes that you found. Go to the x-axis and find 0 on the x-axis. Right there. And we're going to do what kind of a line there?
Up and down?
Up and down. So go up and down through that. I'll be right over there. A is 1, K is 2, H is not 1. To find H, we take whatever's on the bottom, and what are we equaling it to? Oh, sorry, you don't have that one up there. Let me put mine back up. What are we always equaling the bottom to? I've got a red circle and an equal sign, and I set it equal to 0. Whatever's on the bottom of that fraction, no matter how big or how small it is, I take whatever's on the bottom and equal it to 0. So what's on the bottom of that fraction? Yep, take that and equal it to 0.
Just x, right?
Yep, x equals 0. So right here, write x equals 0. Is x all by itself there? Yes. The number after the equal sign then is your h. And that whole thing right there is your vertical. Oh, got a bunch of hands up. Starting here and then moving around.
Is this right?
Yep.
Okay.
Beautiful. 100% correct.
I'm not gonna lie, I did put these by accident, but it was too late, so I just put this like that.
Do you want me to get you a sticker so that you can put it in the right quadrants?
And I'll memorize it.
Okay.
But can I go to the nurse? What's those?
Yes. Just a second. Yes, ma'am. That's perfect. Absolutely right. Give me just a second, Jaden, and I'll write that for you.
Am I right?
Yes. All right. Let's go through this real quick. What is our A value here? 1. What did you guys find out H was? 0. We take this denominator, set it equal to 0. Yes.
Like when it's like a number on the bottom, like if it's an x plus 4, and we already know there's an 8, so it's gonna be the opposite. Do we really have to do this?
No. But I write it out because we see what H is right there and it's my asymptote.
Okay.
But yeah, if you can do it without writing that piece off to the side, that's fine. All right, so I know x equals 0 is my vertical asymptote. This is one where it can be a little bit tricky. And this is why I keep going back to talking about this equation. Which axis do I go to? X-axis. And I go to what number on the x-axis? What number do I go to on the x-axis? 0. Where is 0 on the x-axis? Right here. And then I do what kind of a line through that? Vertical. We're going to do a vertical line through that. So it's going to go up and down like this right here. What's our K value? K is 2. So what's the horizontal asymptote? What is our horizontal asymptote? Not just 2. Y equals 2. You go to the y-axis, you find 2. You go back and forth, left and right, through that point. You're welcome. Which quadrants will we be in? Positive quadrants. Plus, minus, plus, minus. We're going to be in the positive quadrants. So I'm going to scratch out my negative quadrants. Not allowed to put points there. I go up, down, left, and right, whatever A is. What's our A value? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. 1. So how many dots do I end up seeing before I draw my graph in? I end up only seeing 2 because they land on top of each other. Here's where your 2 points should have ended up. Curves through the points, does not cross the asymptotes. What's my domain?
All real numbers and x cannot equal 0.
All real numbers, x cannot equal 0. What about my range?
All real numbers and y cannot equal 2.
All real numbers, y cannot equal 2. To finish up, I want you guys to do the last graph, if you haven't already. Do the very last one. We're going to go through that together in about 3 minutes, and that'll wrap us up. You're in your negative quadrants. Up, down, left, right, 2. K is 0. That looks perfect. Yes. Yes, domain is always x is not equal to, range is always y is not equal to. And you have to have that funny R thing too. Well, when you didn't see an H here, what was that? When you don't see a K, it can also be.
Like your village.
I did not.
Why you just flick the pencil like that?
What did you what?
Oh man.
Oh my God.
Thanks anyway.
Did I do it? Because I actually pay attention to it. When I feel like I'm where you feel like.
How do you do this? It's missing.
All right, let's talk about this last one. I know a lot of people are finished. That's okay. If you're not finished, that's also okay. What is the A value? -2. What did you guys find H to be this time? -5. What about K? K is 0. Whenever you don't see K, then it's 0. What's our vertical asymptote then? X equals -5. So I go to -5 on the x-axis right here, and we do a vertical line through that point. What is the horizontal asymptote? Just like this? Y equals 0. I go to the y-axis and I find 0. Where is that? Yep, it's right there on the origin. And I draw what kind of line through it? A horizontal line. So we go this way. Positives and negatives. Quadrant 1 is always positive. Quadrant 2 is always negative. Quadrant 3, positive. And quadrant 4, negative. Which quadrants will we be in? The negatives, because A is negative. So we're going to scribble out the positive quadrants because we are not there. We go up, down, left, and right, whatever our A is, and in 1. What is our A value? What is our A value? -2. Do I care about the negative part when I'm doing the up, down, left, right? Nope. Your points should have ended up right here. Yep. Up 2, in 1, down 2, in 1. Left 2 in 1, right 2 in 1. Have to end up in the negative quadrants. All right, domain and range, and then we're done. What is my domain? All real numbers. X cannot be equal to negative 5. And range? All real numbers. Y cannot be equal to 0. Beautifully done. Fantastic. That homework that I passed out yesterday to you guys is due Friday. We've covered everything you need to finish that homework. Yep. So that homework assignment is due tomorrow. You guys have this remaining time to work on that. Tomorrow we're going to do an activity to get us ready for our lesson on Friday.